You've done it again, stayed up until 3 a.m. trying to solve a problem that someone could have helped you with in 10 minutes. You've carried the weight alone, struggled in silence, and convinced yourself that asking for help would make you weak. But here's what you don't realize. The reason you can't ask for help isn't what you think it is. It goes deeper than pride, deeper than independence. It's written into your psychology, shaped by your past and connected to wounds you might not even remember. If you've ever felt your throat close up when you needed to ask for something, if you've ever suffered alone rather than reach out, if you've ever watched yourself drown while telling everyone you're fine, then what you're about to discover will explain everything. There are 7 psychological patterns that reveal why you operate this way. And the 5th one, the one most people never talk about, is the reason you'd rather break than bend. But before we go there, pay attention to what's happening in your body right now. If something tightens in your chest as you hear these words, if there's resistance rising, if part of you wants to click away, that's not random. That's your defense system activating. The same system that's kept you isolated for years. If you recognize yourself in this, type "I see myself" in the comments. Not for me, but as the first step in breaking the pattern. Because what comes next will show you exactly how this started and why it's controlled your entire life. You learned this before you had words for it. Somewhere in your childhood, in the moments that shaped you, a message was planted deep in your mind. Asking for help is dangerous. Maybe you asked for comfort and were told to toughen up. Maybe you showed vulnerability and it was used against you later. Maybe you reached out and no one came. Or maybe the people around you were so overwhelmed with their own problems that you learned to make yourself small, to need nothing, to become invisible with your pain. Children are brilliant observers. You watched the adults in your life and you learned the rules. You learned who was safe and who wasn't. You learned what emotions were acceptable and which ones got you rejected. And if asking for help resulted in shame, dismissal, anger, or absence, your young mind made a decision. It decided that survival meant self-reliance, that safety meant silence. This wasn't a conscious choice, it was an adaptation. A brilliant, heartbreaking adaptation that kept you safe in an environment where vulnerability was punished. But here's what nobody tells you. The strategies that protected you as a child become the prison that limits you as an adult. That wall you built to keep out rejection is the same wall that keeps out connection. That independence you developed to survive is the same independence that now isolates you. You don't struggle to ask for help because you're strong. You struggle because you were once small and helpless, and asking didn't work. So you stopped asking. You stopped expecting. You stopped believing that anyone would show up, and you built an identity around being the person who doesn't need anyone. But that identity is starting to crack. You can feel it. The exhaustion of carrying everything alone, the loneliness of never letting anyone in, the weight of pretending you're fine when you're falling apart. And this brings us to the second pattern, the one that explains why you can give endlessly to others but can't receive anything in return. You've built your entire identity on being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who has it together, the one everyone else leans on. You're the friend who listens for hours, the family member who solves problems, the co-worker who stays late to help. You give and give and give, and it feels natural. But the moment someone tries to give back to you, everything inside you rejects it. When someone offers help, you feel uncomfortable, exposed, like you're suddenly in debt. You say, "I'm fine," even when you're not. You say, "I've got it," even when you don't. You minimize your struggles, dismiss your pain, and convince everyone, including yourself, that you don't need what you desperately need. This isn't humility. It's not independence. It's a deeply ingrained belief that your worth is tied to what you provide, not who you are. You learned early that love is conditional, that acceptance is earned, that your value comes from being useful, capable, and undemanding. So you became the helper, the giver, the strong one, because that role felt safe. It gave you purpose. It gave you control. It meant you'd never have to face the terrifying vulnerability of needing someone. But here's the trap. When you can only give and never receive, you're not actually connecting with people. You're performing. You're staying in control by staying above the need for help. Real intimacy requires mutual vulnerability. It requires letting someone see you struggle, letting them carry something for you, letting them matter to you enough that their absence would hurt. And that's what terrifies you most. Not the struggle itself, but the idea of depending on someone who might leave. So you stay self-sufficient. You stay alone in your capability. You build walls out of competence and call it strength. But deep down, there's a part of you that's exhausted, a part that wants to put down the weight, a part that wants someone to see through your "I'm fine" and insist on staying anyway. That part of you is still waiting, and it's connected to the third pattern, the one that explains why you have such a complicated relationship with control. Control feels like safety to you. It always has. When you handle everything yourself, when you don't need anyone, when you keep all the pieces in your hands, you feel secure. Because control means you can't be disappointed. Control means you can't be abandoned. Control means you won't be let down by people who promise to help and then disappear. So you micromanage. You overfunction. You take on more than you should because delegating feels like risk. Asking for help feels like handing someone the power to fail you. And you've been failed before, maybe many times, maybe by the very people who are supposed to protect you. So now you protect yourself by needing no one. But control is exhausting. It's a full-time job with no days off. It means you're always on, always responsible, always carrying the weight. And the tighter you grip, the more isolated you become. Because people can sense when you don't trust them. They can feel when you don't believe they'll show up. And eventually they stop offering. Not because they don't care, but because you've made it clear you don't need them. And that confirms your belief. See, I knew I couldn't count on anyone. But you're not seeing the full picture. You're not seeing how your inability to ask pushed them away. How your walls kept them out. How your need for control made connection impossible. This is the cycle. You don't ask for help because you don't trust people. People stop offering because you always say no. You feel more alone. You grip tighter. The cycle repeats. And underneath it all is a belief so deep you might not even recognize it. The belief that if you need someone, they'll see how broken you really are. That if you ask for help, they'll realize you're not as strong as they thought. That vulnerability equals weakness, and weakness equals rejection. But that belief is based on old information. It's based on a time when you were small and powerless, when the people around you couldn't hold your needs. You're not that child anymore. The people in your life now are not the people who hurt you then. But your nervous system doesn't know that. It's still responding to old threats. Still bracing for old wounds. And that's why the fourth pattern exists. The one that shows up in your body before it ever reaches your mind. Your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. Every time you needed help and didn't get it. Every time you were vulnerable and got hurt. Every time you reached out and met emptiness. Your nervous system recorded it. Not as a memory you can access, but as a physical response you can't control. So now, when you even think about asking for help, your body reacts. Your throat tightens, your chest constricts, your stomach drops. Anxiety floods your system. It's not because you're weak, it's because your body is trying to protect you from a danger it believes is still real. This is called a somatic response. Your body holds trauma that your mind has moved past. And until you address what's stored in your nervous system, No amount of logic will make asking for help feel safe. You can tell yourself, it's okay to need people 1,000 times, but if your body is screaming danger, don't do it, you'll stay silent. You'll stay stuck. This is why some people freeze when they try to ask for help. Why words disappear. Why suddenly they can't speak, can't reach out, can't do the thing they know they need to do. It's not a choice. It's a nervous system response. People who don't struggle with this will say, just ask. What's the big deal? But they don't understand. They don't feel the weight pressing on their chest. They don't feel their body revolt against the act of being seen in need. For you, asking for help isn't a simple request. It's a confrontation with every time you are rejected, dismissed, or abandoned. And your body would rather suffer in silence than risk that pain again. But here's what's also true. Your body can learn new information. It can learn that asking for help doesn't always lead to rejection. That vulnerability doesn't always equal pain. That some people will actually show up. But that learning doesn't happen through thinking. It happens through experience. Small, safe experiences where you reach out and someone reaches back. Where you let someone in and they don't leave. Where you ask for help and the world doesn't collapse. Those experiences rewire your nervous system one moment at a time, and that brings us to the fifth pattern, the one most people never talk about, the one that sits at the core of why you've built your life around not needing anyone. Stay with me. You're terrified of being seen as a burden. That fear lives so deep inside you that it shapes every interaction, every relationship, every moment you might need something. You've convinced yourself that your value lies in being low maintenance, easy, uncomplicated, the person who gives but never takes, who helps but never needs help, who's strong so others don't have to be. And beneath that conviction is a belief that if people knew how much you were struggling, if they saw how much you actually needed, they would leave. They would see you as too much, too heavy, too broken. So you manage your image carefully. You perform okayness even when you're drowning. You hide your pain behind smiles and I'm fine and redirect every conversation away from your struggles. Because you believe that your lovability is conditional on not being a burden. But here's the devastating truth. The more you hide, the lonelier you become. Because nobody actually knows you. They know the version you show them, the capable one, the strong one, the one who doesn't need anything. But they don't know the real you, the one who's exhausted, the one who's barely holding it together. The one who desperately needs someone to see through the performance and say, you don't have to be strong right now, I've got you. That version of you stays hidden, and the longer it stays hidden, the more you believe it's unlovable. You think you're protecting people from your burden. But what you're really doing is protecting yourself from the possibility of rejection. Because if you never ask and they never say no, you never have to face the pain of not being enough. This is the pattern that keeps you trapped. You want connection, but you won't risk vulnerability. You want support, but you won't ask for it. You want to be known, but you won't let anyone see you. And all of it stems from a lie you learned long ago. The lie that your needs are too much. But your needs are not too much. They're human. Everyone has them. The difference is some people learned it was safe to express them, and you learned it wasn't. So you buried them. You buried them so deep that now even you don't recognize them most of the time. Until you're completely overwhelmed. Until you break. And even then, you try to hide it. This pattern doesn't make you noble. It makes you alone. And it's connected to something even deeper. The sixth pattern that shows you exactly how this plays out in your connections with others. You test people without telling them it's a test. You need help, but you don't ask directly. Instead, you wait. You drop hints. You hope they'll notice. You hope they'll offer. You hope they'll prove. They care by reading your mind and showing up without being asked. And when they don't, when they miss the signs because they're not looking for them, You feel confirmed in your deepest belief. See, no one actually cares. I really am alone. But here's what you're not seeing. You set people up to fail. You create impossible standards. You want them to know what you need without you having to say it. Because if you have to ask, it doesn't count. If you have to tell them, it's not real care. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't ask. They don't know. You feel abandoned. You pull further away. The relationship slowly dies from lack of true intimacy, and you add it to your evidence that people can't be trusted. But the real issue isn't that people don't care. It's that you won't let them. You won't give them the information they need. You won't be direct about your needs. You won't risk the vulnerability of saying, I'm struggling and I need support, because somewhere inside you believes that real love, real care, real connection should be automatic. That if someone truly loved you, they would just know. They would sense it. They would show up. This belief comes from childhood, from a time when you couldn't articulate your needs, when you needed the adults around you to attune to you, to notice, to respond without being asked. And when they didn't, when they missed your cues or were too distracted or overwhelmed to see you, you learned that your needs were invisible. So now you recreate that dynamic. You make your needs invisible and then feel hurt when no one sees them. You push people away with one hand while desperately hoping they'll fight to stay with the other. You say, I'm fine, and pray someone will call you a liar. This is exhausting for everyone involved. For you, because you're never actually getting what you need. For them, because they're always failing tests they didn't know they were taking. And it's all because you won't do the one thing that could change everything. You won't ask clearly, directly, vulnerably for what you need. But there's a reason for that resistance, and it's connected to the seventh and final pattern, the one that ties everything together. You've built your entire identity around self-sufficiency. It's not just a behavior, it's who you believe you are. You're the strong one, the independent one, the one who doesn't need anyone, and that identity has protected you. It's given you purpose, control, and a sense of safety in a world that felt unsafe. So asking for help doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it feels like a betrayal of yourself. It feels like you're becoming someone you're not, someone weak, someone needy, someone you've spent your entire life trying not to be. This is why change is so hard. You're not just changing a behavior, you're challenging a core belief about who you are, and your mind will resist that with everything it has. It will tell you that asking for help is giving up, that needing people makes you pathetic, that you've survived this long on your own, so why change now? These thoughts aren't random. They're your defense system trying to keep you in familiar territory. Because even if that territory is painful, it's known. And your nervous system prefers known pain to unknown possibility. But here's what's also true. The identity you built around not needing anyone is starting to cost you more than it protects you. The loneliness is getting heavier. The exhaustion is getting deeper. The isolation is becoming unbearable. And some part of you knows that if you keep going this way, you'll stay alone forever. Not because no one wants to help you, but because you won't let them. So you're at a crossroads. You can keep protecting the identity that says, I don't need anyone. Or you can start building a new one that says, I'm strong enough to be vulnerable. Both are valid. Both are choices. But only one leads to actual connection. Only one leads to being truly known. Only one leads to the support you've been craving your whole life. So what do you do now? How do you start unraveling patterns that have been with you since childhood? You start small. You don't try to transform overnight. You choose one safe person, one moment, one small ask. Maybe it's asking a friend to listen without trying to fix anything. Maybe it's letting someone know you're having a hard day. Maybe it's accepting an offer of help instead of automatically saying no. Whatever it is, it needs to feel manageable. Because your nervous system needs proof that asking for help won't destroy you. It needs evidence that vulnerability can be safe, and that evidence comes through experience, not thinking. Each time you ask for something small and someone shows up, you're rewriting the story. You're teaching your body that connection is possible, that people can be trusted, that your needs aren't too much. It won't feel natural at first. It will feel awkward, uncomfortable, maybe even wrong. Your defense system will activate. Your mind will tell you to stop. But if you can sit with that discomfort, if you can ask anyway, something starts to shift. You also need to grieve. Grieve the child who learned that asking was dangerous. Grieve the years you spent carrying everything alone. Grieve the relationships that could have been deeper if you'd let people in. That grief is necessary. It's the bridge between who you were and who you're becoming. And you need to practice self-compassion. You're not broken for struggling with this. You're not weak for finding it hard to ask for help. You're human. You're carrying wounds that made perfect sense in the context you grew up in. The goal isn't to become someone who needs help all the time. It's to become someone who can ask when they genuinely need it. Someone who can receive support without shame. Someone who can let people matter to them without terror. Take a breath right now. Put your hand on your chest and just feel yourself here. Feel the part of you that's been carrying this alone for so long, the part that learned it had to, and say this quietly to yourself. It's safe to need people. You don't have to believe it fully yet. You just have to let the possibility exist. Because the truth is, you were never meant to do life alone. Humans are wired for connection, for support, for mutual care. And the fact that you learn to survive without it doesn't mean you have to keep living that way. You're allowed to need help. You're allowed to ask for it. You're allowed to let people carry something for you. Your worth is not determined by how little you need. Your strength is not measured by how much you can endure alone. Real strength is knowing when to reach out. Real courage is letting yourself be seen. And real connection only happens when you stop performing and start being honest about where you are. If this resonates with you, if you recognize yourself in these patterns, write this in the comments. I'm learning to ask, not as a promise, not as pressure, just as an acknowledgement that you see the pattern, that you understand where it came from, and that you're willing to try something different. Because you deserve support, you deserve to be seen, you deserve to put down the weight and let someone stand beside you. The choice has always been yours, and now, maybe for the first time, you're ready to choose differently.